Hey, what's up, YouTubers? I beg your pardon if I have to lower, my voice, the volume of my voice, as well as the volume of the sound here in the recording. But in any regard, in any event, welcome to the program, to the video, and to my channel. So tonight, I would like to give the origin of species a read, apparently written by Charles Darwin. Before I proceed to read the Bible, So without further ado, let us begin. So the theory that shook the world, fewer other books have created such a lasting storm of controversy as The Origin of Species. Darwin's theory that species derive from other species by a gradual evolutionary process, and that the average level of each species is heightened by the survival of the fittest, stirred up popular debate to a fever pitch. Its acceptance revolutionized the course of science, as Julian Huxley, the noted biologist, points out in his illuminating introduction. The importance of Darwin's contribution to modern scientific knowledge is almost impossible to evaluate. A truly great book, one which can still be read with profit by professional biologists. Quote unquote, Darwin was one of history's towering geniuses and ranks with the greatest heroes of man's intellectual progress. From George Gaylord Simpson in The Meaning of Evolution. Let us proceed. I'm not sure if I should read introduction. Maybe I will just skip the introduction because it's too long. And I'm not sure if I should also skip. I will skip an historical sketch. The origin of species. There's another introduction. Okay, I'm not sure. I'll just skip both introductions. Chapter 1. Variation under domestication causes of variability, effects of habit, and the use or disuse of parts. Correlated variation, inheritance, character of domestic varieties, difficulty of distinguishing, difficulty. So, difficulty of distinguishing between varieties and species. Origin of domestic varieties from one or more species. Domestic pigeons. Their differences and origin. Principles of selection. Anciently followed, and their effects. Methodical and unconscious selection. Unknown origin of our domestic productions. Circumstances favorable to man's power of selection. So you see, it has not yet even mentioned natural selection, but instead man's power of selection. So let us proceed further. Causes of variability. When we compare the individuals of the same variety or sub-variety of our older cultivated plants and animals, one of the first points which strikes us is that they generally differ more from each other than do the individuals of any one species or variety in a state of nature. And if we reflect on the vast diversity of the plants and animals which have been cultivated and which have varied during all ages under the most different climates and treatment, we are driven to conclude that this great variability is due to our domestic productions having been raised under conditions of life not so uniform as and somewhat different from those to which the parent species had been exposed under nature. There is also some probability in the view of propounded by Andrew Knight, that is, variability may be partly connected with excessive food. It seems clear that organic beings must be exposed during several generations to new conditions to cause any great amount of variation, and that when the organization has once begun to vary, it generally continues varying for many generations. No case is on record of a variable organism ceasing to vary under cultivation. Our oldest cultivated plants, such as wheat, still yield new varieties. Our oldest domesticated animals are still capable of rapid improvement or modification. As far as I am able to judge, after long attending to the subject, the conditions of life appear to act in two ways. Directly on the whole organization or on certain parts alone, and indirectly by affecting the reproductive system. With respect to the direct action, we must bear in mind that in every case, as Professor Willsman has lately insisted, and as I have incidentally shown in my work on variations under domestication, there are two factors, namely the nature of the organism and the nature of the conditions. The former seems to be much more important, for nearly similar variations sometimes arise under. As far as we can judge, dissimilar conditions, and on the other hand, dissimilar variations arise under conditions which appear to be nearly uniform. The effects on the offspring are either definite or indefinite. They may be considered as definite when all or nearly all the offspring of individuals exposed to certain conditions during several generations are modified in the same manner. It is extremely difficult to come to any conclusion in regard to the extent of the changes which have been thus definitely induced. There can, however, be little doubt about many side changes, such as size from the amount of food, color from the nature of the food, thickness of the skin, and hair from climate. And each of the endless variations which we see in the plumage of our fowls must have had some efficient cause, and if the same cause were to act uniformly during a long series of generations on many individuals, all probably would be modified in the same manner. Such fact as the complex and extraordinary outgrowths which variably follow from the insertion of a minute drop or poison by a gall-producing insect show us what singular modifications might result in the case of plants from a chemical change in the nature of the sap. Indefinite variability is much more common result of changed conditions than definite variability, and has probably played a more important part in the formation of our domestic races. We see indefinite variability in the endless slight peculiar rarities which distinguish the individuals of the same species and which cannot be accounted for by inheritance from either a parent or from some more remote ancestor. Even strongly marked differences occasionally appear in the young of the same litter and in seedlings from the same seed capsule. At long intervals of time, out of millions of individuals reared in the same country and fed on nearly the same food, deviations of structure so strongly pronounced as to deserve to be called monstrosities arise. But monstrosities cannot be separated by any distinct line from slighter variations. All such changes of structure, whether extremely slight or strongly marked, with which appears amongst many individuals living together, may be considered as the indefinite effects of the conditions of life on each individual organism, in nearly the same manner as the chill affects different men in an indefinite manner, according to their state of body or constitution, causing coughs or colds. Excuse me, I just don't know how to pronounce this. rheumatism, or inflammation of various organs, with respect to what I have called the indirect action of changed conditions, namely through the reproductive system of the being affected. We may infer that variability is thus induced partly from the fact of this system being extremely sensitive to any change in the conditions, and partly from the similarity, as Reuter and others have remarked, between the variability which follows from the crossing of distinct species and that which may be observed with plants and animals reared under new or unnatural conditions. Many facts clearly show how eminently susceptible the reproductive system is to very slight changes in the surrounding conditions. Nothing is more easy than to tame an animal, and few things more difficult than to get it to breed freely under confinement. Even when the male and female unite, how many animals there are which will not breed, though kept in an almost free state in their native country. With an exclamation symbol. This followed by an exclamation symbol. Yeah, off the record, which doesn't exist in this version of the book. Yeah, this is generally but erroneously attributed to vitiated or vitiated instincts. Many cultivated plants display the utmost vigor, and yet rarely or never seed. In some few cases, it has been discovered that a very trifling change, such as a little more or less water at some particular period of growth, will determine whether or not a plant will produce seeds. I cannot here give the details which I have collected and elsewhere published on this curious subject, but to show how singular the laws are which determine the reproduction of animals under confinement, I may mention that carnivorous animals, even from the tropics, breed in this country pretty freely under confinement. Excuse me. With the exception of the plantigrades or bear family, which seldom produce young. So yeah, in order to minimize your feelings of boredom, I suppose I should stop here for this filming session, reading The Origin of Species by Charles Darwin. And I can conclude pretty much that, considering the fact that Charles Darwin had used plenty of be verbs, you know, such as is, are, were, blah blah blah. You know, he so rarely, you know, used, you know, ordinary verbs, which include regular and irregular verbs in English, to, you know, in order to describe what happened, you know, during his observation or experiment. But instead, you know, he just said plenty of rubbish. Not exactly fully rubbish, but you know, he merely, you know, emphasized, you know, what he reckoned about how animal or plant species transformed over time during the period of his observation, investigation, and experimentation. Perhaps, you know, yeah, I just kind of for sure, you know, not, at least not before I finish up or I wrap up reading the whole book. So anyway, guys, thank you very much for listening, for watching and listening to this filming session, and I hope you are having a great day or great night. If not, yeah, do bear in mind that I shall keep all of you guys out there in my prayers. So stay strong, stay put, stay safe, and remain steadfast and faithful. I shall see you guys in the next videos on YouTube. Take care and cheers. Bye bye.